my friend Justin is a big God of War fan, so I covered this last time. I got to make sure I cover it again. I wanted to ask you, like, what was your role in God of War? What did you do for God of War?
I was the body model for Kratos.
Nice.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah. Actually, what I did was I developed. When you make games, it's not just one person, so I always have to caveat that.
Yeah.
But I designed the first level of the game, so the Hydra level.
Nice.
And then I worked on all the bosses. And then I did something that it's called the Challenge of the Gods now, but it originally was called the 100-level dungeon. And so we had prototyped out 100 individual of those little challenges, and then we just kept cutting them down until I think there was like 10 or 20 left, I think, in the end. But then, of course, everything that we did, Dave Jaffe, of course, was there, and he kind of gave everything his spin and added stuff and plussed it up, as they say at Disney.
Right.
And yeah, so it was a really interesting experience. It's really super talented people. I mean, the good thing is most of them are still there working on the other games. But yeah, amazing artists, really super talented programmers, really good designers. It was a good team overall. It was a neat experience working there.
Nice. And this I don't think had like a huge significance when you told it, but last time. But you came into that project a little late, right? Like,
yeah, it had been going on for I want to say 3 years. So it had been going on for a while, and I only worked on it for like the last year of it up until Alpha, and then I, like I said, I realized I wanted to see my kids at night and on the weekend.
Yeah.
So I got into publishing. So
nice. Congrats, by the way, though, because I personally haven't played God of War, but I've definitely. Come on.
Haven't read my book. Haven't played God of War. What else haven't you done? Never met me in person.
I've played Maximo.
You did play Maximo. Okay, all right. That absolves a lot of sins there.
And I want to play Darksiders. Actually, I've been thinking about
Darksiders. Actually, if you liked Maximo, I think you'll like Darksiders because and the irony is, I really had nothing to do with it, but there's a lot of things that remind me of Maximo in Darksiders. Plus, it has a lot of Zelda-y aspects to it and stuff. It's actually a really cool game, and it was really neat. So I was part of the group that went down to Vigil or over to Vigil to check them out when they were first pitching the game idea, and when they pitched it, I remember telling the people I was working with, I'm like, you know what, this is a game I really want to play, but more importantly, I'd love to work on. Well, it didn't work out. They were working on it for a couple of years, and I wasn't involved in that. Other game managers were working on it. But when they kind of called me up and said, "Hey, can you help us out with this stuff?" I leapt at the opportunity because I'm like, I want to be involved in this game. This game is too cool to not be involved with. Yeah. So I'm real proud that I was able to help out with that.
Nice. But yeah, I was just saying congrats because I've definitely seen the Hydra boss battle listed like pretty high on like best boss battles of all time.
Yeah, it's really cool actually. It's nice that it's nice when people appreciate your work.
Definitely. I mean, it's cool that we're talking to the author of Level Up, but at the same time, I'm throwing in like, dude, this guy made the Hydra boss battle. I mean, if you don't know what Level Up is, even if you could care less about the book, like, you need to know that we're talking about somebody cool here. So,
well, you should go check out the book because the book is damn cool.
Right, that's
the book has not only does it have lots of great advice in it, but it also has lots of very amusing pictures, and it has a kick-ass chili recipe.
Oh yeah, I remember you telling us that.
So if you like chili, I highly recommend my book.
Well, awesome. I'm going to have a new chili recipe then.
There you go. Try it out. You can review that along with the book on your podcast. You can say, we've got a pot of chili right here. We're going to try it out.
I should do that. That would be cool.
You should do that. It would be the book review and chili cook-off.
Sounds good. We might have to do that. All right, so we'll go ahead and get into it. Scott wrote the book Level Up, The Guide to Great Video Game Design. And so I guess, first of all, Scott, like, how did this happen? What made you decide to write a book?
I was really Well, I was lucky and I was prepared. That's kind of, people say there's no such thing as luck.
Yeah.
It's just being prepared at the right time, but there's definitely some luck involved. I was at the Game Developers Conference giving a talk on level design in Disneyland, and it was very well received, and a sci-fi writer by the name of Cory Doctorow, who's an editor for Boing Boing, wrote a really glowing review of the talk. He literally transcribed the entire talk. And an editor at Wiley & Sons, who's the publisher, they're the guys that do the For Dummies books.
Okay.
They literally just called me up out of the blue, and they said, hey, we heard your talk. They didn't even go to my talk. They just heard about it through the Boing Boing article. And they said, would you be interested in writing a book on game design? And previous to this, there were a couple of instances where I was working with developers. One of them was a group that I was going up to Seattle every week, and I was always threatening, because I always find myself telling all these stories about, when I worked on this and when I worked on that, and I said, one day I'm just going to write all these down and just have it in a book so I can just hand it to you and just go, here, rather than you having to listen to me prattle on with all these old stories, just read my book. And so that was always kind of a lingering thing in the back of my head of like, well, if I was going to write a book on game design, what would I put in it? And then about the same time, I was working with the Fifth Cell guys, and Jeremiah Slaxa, the creative director there, when Drawn to Life is a platformer game, and he was like, hey, Scott, you've worked on a lot of platform games. Can you write up a document telling us everything you know? And I said, well, it's kind of a tall order, but let me instead put together a short document writing everything I know. And so I wrote what I call the Platform Primer, and that's actually something that you can check out at my website, mrbossdesign.com.
Okay.
MRBOSSTESIGN. And so I had this outline of a book in mind, and I had the Platform Primer kind of just sitting around, not really doing anything. And so when Wiley called up and they said, hey, do you have an idea for a book? Well, first they said, do you want to write a book on game design? And I was like, do you want like the For Dummies book? And they're like, no, we want the Scott Rogers book of game design. And that was really flattering, actually, that they didn't want me to just make another installment, but they wanted something unique.
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
so then they said, well, I said, yeah, I'd love to do that. And so they said, all right, well, what would the Scott Rogers book of game design be like? And I said, well, actually, here's an outline I've been putting together, and here's this platform primer that I did, and it kind of will look something like this. And so if you look at the cover of Level Up, it looks like one of my notebooks. That was the intention, that it looked like a notebook, because I am a notebook guy. I carry notebooks around with me everywhere I go, and so whenever I get struck with some good idea or bad idea or whatever, I have some place to write it down. Nice. And so the goal was to essentially like give other perspective and working game designers kind of a peek into my notebook, so that way if they ever were working on something and they go, you know what, I'm stuck here, we're thinking about this idea or trying to get something in, well, let's find out what Scott has to say about it, right? And so the intention is, even though the book is like over 500 pages, the goal was that it would be something you put in your back pocket, so that way you'd always have it for reference, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing I want to say about it is that it's a book that is not really much about theory, and there are a lot of really good books out there already on game theory. Mm-hmm. But I didn't want to rehash the same old stuff over and over again, because to be honest, I even though I like talking about theory when I'm at a convention or in a coffee house or whatever, I don't really find it that useful when I'm actually working on a game. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to make something that I would find useful that was all about practical. It was very much more of a how-to than a, well, let's think about, kind of book. Yeah. And so I always say that Level Up fits very nicely on your bookshelf next to, choose your favorite theoretical book on game design, and then put my book right next to it, because that's the other side of the coin. Right? It will help you out when you're making your game. Yeah. And so in the book, and keep in mind, it's a book purely about video game design. It's mm-hmm. not a book about programming. It's not a book about art, even though both those topics come up. And it's not a book even really about other type of game designs, although there are ideas in it that will help you with, if you want to do board games or card games or playground games or whatever. There are things in there that are good for that. Mm-hmm. But mainly it's about video games.